Tarana. Nice to see
Hello.
Nice to see you. Well, I'm Tiffany from Bronx Narratives. Super excited to have this conversation with you today. As you know, we are celebrating our 10-year anniversary. We've been kicking things off and highlighting notable people from our beloved borough, and you are one of the ones we really, really wanted to talk to. Like you've done so many incredible things, and your work is so important. So wanted to kind of dig into your brain a little bit and have what I hope to be a fruitful conversation. So if you want to just introduce yourself for the people.
Well, I'm Tarana Burke. I'm the founder of the MeToo Movement and the Chief Vision Officer for MeToo International, our organization. I am a Bronx native, or as I like to call myself, a Bronx nationalist. And um, yeah, mother, daughter, wife, friend, sister, homegirl, all of the
Awesome.
above.
All the things. Awesome. Well, so let me start off by asking you, what is your utopia? If you could, and you can take that as in any way that you want to. But what is your utopia?
Oh, my utopia. Well, I mean, I spent the majority of my life working towards uh, a liberated world that has liberated people that look like me. So that would be, that would be my utopia. A world that is far more liberated than the one we live in, where people are uh, my understanding of liberation, right? Like free to move in their bodies, in the spaces that we occupy, the bodies that we occupy, as we see fit. And in particular, Black people, brown people, people who have been pushed to the margins, particularly women and femmes, and who feel and understand liberation as an everyday experience. That would be an incredible utopia, and to do that on a planet that is not dying.
Yeah, that part.
Yeah, right. All right, there's no sense in experiencing a personal utopia in a hellscape. So I would love to that would be, euphoric and utopia.
A beautiful vision. And so let me ask you about growing up in the Bronx. Like I'm sure a lot of things made it home for you and makes it still nostalgic for you, but what makes it home for you? And as you were growing up, I mean, and whatever that thing was, does it still exist today?
Oh, I mean, community made it home.
Mm,
I'm of the Bronx of the 70s and 80s, 90s. That was very, very, very community focused. And I think it still exists today. It just probably looks different, like everything else looks different. But it was, New York is a collection of neighborhoods, and this neighborhood and then knows that neighborhood, and it's how you hang out, how you. I grew up in High Bridge, and then we moved from High Bridge to sort of the North Bronx by Soundview area. I'm from Bronxdale too, and so those sides of the world don't necessarily mix. But so I had two very different experiences. But in High Bridge, my community experience comes from High Bridge. That's where I'm from. That's where my family is from. My grandmother, my grandparents lived down the hill from me. My my cousins and all of that lived in the neighborhood. Um, and even that, my aunt lived in Webster Projects, and we would walk. It was kind of crazy, but we would walk over the 169th Street. So it was a deep sense of community, and even in the sense of like how you hung out is how you knew people. So you may be from different areas of the Bronx, but if you went to skate key every weekend, you knew people from like you may go somewhere else, but like, oh, I know you because I seen you at skate key, or I seen you in the fever. You knew people from how you hung out. If you went to certain parks or if you went to certain places, we kind of got to know each other. Not even from like schools. I knew more people from social hanging out than I did from like schools and you found out what school they went to, that might be a problem once you find out what school they went to. But you know, it's like, oh, that's those girls from Clinton, those girls from
Yeah.
Walton. But but yeah, I also yeah, so but I love that about us. And also like when you're in other places and you know Bronx people, like if you randomly happen to be in Brooklyn.
Not randomly.
This is my younger days, obviously. Um, but like Bronx and Harlem, that like community sense of community, I miss that so much. I don't, and I've never had it again. Being able to walk community to like neighborhood to neighborhood, and it wasn't unless you happen to have like I don't want to mix this with violence, but unless you happen to have some sort of conflict with somebody in a neighborhood, I remember the summers of like walking through neighborhoods and like, you know, because you knew somebody on this block or that block,
Mhm.
or walking to Harlem, you know, getting your friends and then walking over the bridge and walking downtown. And you kind of pick up people as you go along, right?
Mhm.
You walk the same routes all the time, so you get to know people in that neighborhood, the old ladies who sat in the window that you talk to every day, you know, and bendición, and you just like, it's just it was just a good feeling.
Yeah.
The people's understanding of the Bronx comes from pop culture and news that is really finite and targeted on hyper negative things. And you very rarely got to see what I experienced of elders and young people and people in the community who really were very, very connected to each other and yeah, and protective of each other.
Yeah. Do you feel that community is still there today, or maybe it's changed a little bit?
I think it's changed, but I also think that like I'll tell you what, my mother has moved out of Bronxdale now, but I felt up until a certain point when the neighbor when the people in the building started to change for years after I left Bronxdale, like I moved out, I moved down south, whatever, and I moved to Philly. I felt comfortable with my mother growing older there because the people in the building had been there for years. You
Mm-hmm.
and I don't care who's doing what. Nobody's gonna stick up my mother. You know what I'm saying? You're not
Mm-hmm.
gonna rob my mother.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Stuff like that. I will say that my nerves get a little bad thinking about my mom who still lives in the city in the Bronx. Um, as she gets older and how that sense of community and like protection of our elders or looking out for young people that has seemed to shift.
Yeah.
Um, it feels differently when I come, you know, walking through the city, it feels differently than it did when I was younger. But I will also say I don't live in the Bronx anymore, right? I'm not experiencing it there. I'm there probably more than other people who don't live anymore because I still have a lot of, you know, my mother's there. But as I walk through the neighborhoods, as I'm like, it feels different, but I would never say it's gone.
Okay.
I would never say it's gone because then I sound like the people who didn't live there when I was there. You know, I think that, you know, I think you can always tell what's happening in the summertime. Like ride through the neighborhoods in the summertime and see what you see. You still see people outside. You still see people, you know, gathering together. But I'd be lying if I didn't say it feels different. It doesn't feel the energy doesn't feel the same. And the news, right? Like when I read the news of the stuff that's happening and like I'm like, damn, I can't. It's not like there wasn't terrible news all the time before the different about different things, but you know, you hear about certain things. I'm like, dang, I just feel like we didn't see this level
Mm-hmm.
of I don't know. It just
Yeah.
it feels a little different. Yeah, it feels a little different.
Yeah. You mentioned I asked because some people view the Bronx, and maybe just a lot, all of New York, but we'll talk about the Bronx right now, as sort of a pass-through sort of place situation. How do you agree with that? And why do people leave?
They leave because it's expensive. I think other than cost, I don't know. And I'm, you know, obviously I'm biased, and there'll be lots of people who will say maybe give other reasons. I don't think maybe cost and quality of life for some people, right?
Mm,
I'm a native. I love the city. I'm the person who thought the opposite. When I lived in Philly and I lived in other places, I lived down south in Alabama. I dreamed of retiring in New York. Like I could live there for the rest of my life. Um, so I think the pass through thing, it's a city that is made up of a lot of outsiders, right?
mm,
There's a lot of people who are not born and raised there who live there now. So they come for an experience that maybe they have dreamed up in their mind. And then when they don't have that experience, they're reporting on based on, like they're comparing that to what they wanted versus what they got. It is what it is. Um, it is, and leaving that parking that there, and it is incredibly expensive. um that experience that so many of us love and hold dear is becoming flattened in a lot of ways, right?
mm,
Cultural experiences that we love and adored uh are fighting against gentrification, and interlopers come and flatten those experiences. And so it doesn't make it worth paying all of that for this something that you came for a cultural experience and then you try to zap the cultural experience out of it.
mm,
So I do understand the critique. I just don't believe it's right and true. And the thing that I love about being from New York, and particularly the Bronx, like Bronx Narratives is a perfect example, right? There is all of this understanding that people have about who we are. They would never believe that something like Bronx Narratives exists. They would never believe like the
mm,
documentary project exists. They would never, you
mhm,
know, all the brothers who do what's the little store? The store. Bronx Native, like there's all of these beautiful little projects. Um, we're just, and I'm gonna talk about my borough because I put on for my borough. There's just all of these ways that I think we are wonderfully resilient and creative and deeply and it's deeply embedded in the DNA of the borough, of the city, but certainly of the borough. And so lots of people will pass through, and those who are meant to stay will stay, right?
mm,
And those who, it's like if if you those who
mm,
get it and see it want to cling to that and want more of it. And it's why we continue to thrive, and why these kind of projects come and they become institutionalized. um because this is something that is, we're really good at it. Right?
mhm,
Like we're really good at it, and we have been good at it for decades and decades and decades. We didn't just create hip hop, right? Like there's a legacy of culture and creation that comes out of the Bronx that is beautiful and important. And so some people will pass through, and they should.
right. No, I agree 1000%.
Mm-hmm.
So pivot just a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and because you spoke about projects, could you talk about what led you to create the Me Too movement
Mm-hmm.
and anything that you have going on now or
Yeah.
where you're now? Mhm,
So me too, as much as I love the Bronx, I also experienced trauma there. And so many of us experience trauma. Um, and in all across the world, right? It's not place based or specific to that. And so my experience, though, specific to being a Black girl, was I got older and worked with Black girls, I realized there was no place for us, um, no place for healing, and also no place for action. And one thing I know is that we are, if this is something that's going to end, it's going to be us that does the work to end it. And not just to do the work, to come up with the solutions, right? Because we're not just workhorses, we are thinkers and
mhm,
strategists. And um, so Me Too was originally for young survivors, and it was about finding a place to build community, right? To see each other, and to find solutions together to combating it in our community. Um, and that's what led me to want to start it. I didn't have anything, you know. What When I started looking, I was working with sixth and seventh grade girls, and I'm like, I was this age when this was happening to me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what could have what could somebody have said to me? How could somebody have intervened in my life at that moment in the seventh grade that could have changed the trajectory of my life? That was what was in my mind when I was starting it. Like, my mandate was leadership. I wanted to teach the girls leadership, and that got, and in some ways it's still that to some degree, but you can't, we talk a lot about empowerment and equity, and women's power, women's equity, women's leadership, and none of that is possible without pairing it with safety.
Mm.
Right? You
Yeah.
can give us all the power in the world, if we don't feel safe to exercise that power, if we don't feel safe to live in that power, it's not it's not useful. And so I just wanted to create something that was addressing that.
Yeah, I love that you did that, and it's such important work to comment on something you just said. I think that the more powerful the woman, or more powerful, whether it's perceived power or realized power, I think there's less of a assumption of a need for safety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And I think that dynamic, so you got to fight against that too, right?
yeah,
Um,
100, absolutely. So, and that's what I'm doing, right? We started Me Too International in 2019, 2018, 2019, and that was so that I could create a container for it after Me Too went viral. It was like, well, the work that I started in a very specific way now was global, and I wanted to be sure that the voice of the people who it was founded for, which is Black and Brown women and femmes, which is people who are most marginalized, people who find themselves without a voice at times, um, that we had a vision for what it looks like to have a movement that's wrapped around them. That
mm,
is, you know, I wanted to make sure that we had a container for that. And also the larger work that's happening in the world is happening by us.
yep.
And so what does it look like to have somebody who is convening and organizing and providing thought leadership around that work? And that's what we do. Um, and the third thing is that, to my surprise, I didn't realize how much people just don't understand sexual violence. They just
Mm,
don't. They just have all these assumptions, all of these half notions. I mean, listen, we've been watching Law and Order SVU for 25 years, right?
right.
And as much as I will binge watch like the next person, um, we need other sources of information
Mm,
about the breadth and depth of this issue and
mhm,
how it affects our material lives, how it affects the lives of people around us, how it is, and how it is not an individual problem. It is a cultural problem, an institutional problem, a political problem, right? And we have to address it. It's a social justice problem. We have to address it like that. And as long as we keep breaking it down and watering it down to like a he said, she said, and a pop
mm,
culture and who did the what, this will still be an insidious disease that is affecting our communities that we don't do anything about, that we turn and look the other way, that we keep silent. And what Me Too going viral told us is that people are ready to not be silent. And when
mhm,
I see people ready not to be silent, if you're ready to break your silence, oftentimes you're ready to act. And so we want to make sure we have a vehicle for them to do that.
yeah, right.
Yeah, we are a global organization around our global network launched with 134 organizations across 33 countries around the world. We have a US network, Survivors Agenda, that has more than 60 organizations involved. We are about to launch our campaign, Survivors Vote, which is about
Mm,
listening the power of survivors in this country
mhm,
into a constituency that is a power base, right? Because you have, again, these politicians come out every year or every 4 years, and and it's beyond the politicians, honestly. It's even the people who frame the issues. People
Mm-hmm.
frame these issues, and you hear things like, which is true. Reproductive rights are on the ballot. Women's lives are on the ballot. Women's issues are on the ballot, but they will not say women's sexual violence is on the ballot. Clearly, just make it plain.
Mm-hmm.
Sexual violence is on the ballot. You can't have a sexual predator running for president and not say sexual violence is on the ballot. But I don't want to go too
No,
far.
no, it's fine. I was just gonna comment that it's not as it's just not as appealing. It's not as marketable. It's not as appealing
Mm-mm.
to ears.
No,
Nobody wants to. Nobody
no, no.
wants to touch it.
It was very sexy when you can say, "Oh, look at Harvey Weinstein. Oh, look, R. Kelly. Oh, look." If you notice, when they, even in the amplifying of the issue, it's still about centering a person who causes harm. Oftentimes, that person is a man, right? Even in that, we can't even amplify the issue and 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 try to find space to take care of people who are harmed. It is always, oh, look at this person. They accuse them of hurting somebody. Let's see what's going to happen to them.
Mm,
Let's
mm,
see. Let's see what they're going to do to them. Are they going to get away with it? Or are they not? It becomes a spectator sport.
oh,
And what we forget in all of that is
the victims.
there is a person who was harmed. When the smoke clears, there's still a person who lost the right to bodily autonomy, which is our basic human right.
Mm,
Somebody that was harmed there. If I was walking down the street and I punched you in your face and then I kept walking, you're not you're not gonna be like, I wonder what's gonna happen to them. You want to understand, you just want to walk around with a black eye.
mm,
There's a couple of things you want done. Yes, you want to make sure that this person doesn't punch you in your face again, but you're not just gonna walk around with a black eye. Somebody stab you in the gut, you're not just gonna be like, oh man, I'm bleeding. Let's go figure out why that guy stabbed me in the gut.
mm,
You want to take care of the person who stabbed you in the gut, but you're going to stop the bleeding. You're not
right.
walk around bleeding like, why do people stab people in the gut? It's
Mm,
just crazy. No, you're going to stop the bleeding. You're going to make sure there's no harm to your internal organs. You're going to go get some x-rays. You're going to figure out, do I need, you know, the thing that
yeah.
it's the thing I try to help people do is compare it to gun violence. When somebody gets shot in our community, particularly a young person, we rally. And we understand that as not just individual safety, we understand that as community safety. Because when somebody gets shot in our community, not only do we rally to support the individual who was harmed, the family of the individual was harmed. The conversation is, how do we keep these streets safe? Right?
Right.
People start saying, I want my child to be able to go back and forth to school without getting shot. I want to go to walk to the grocery store without getting shot. What do we need to do to keep our streets safe? We got to get these guns off the street.
Yep.
When somebody's raped in our community, molested in our community, sexually assaulted in our community, we say, oh, damn, I wonder what happened. You think they really did that? I don't know. Why would he do that? He don't need to rape nobody. I don't. You see how, like, the conversation is decidedly different. And even if you believe that it happened, even if it's straight up and down, this person was harmed. They're like, wow, that's kind of messed up that happened to her or him or them, right? Damn, I hate that happened. I hope they getting help. I hope
Mm,
they got therapy. I hope they get better. And he should go to jail. And he should go to jail and she should go get therapy, or that person should go, and that's it. We are walled off from any responsibility. What were the circumstances that existed that allowed that to happen? Is there an
mm-hmm.
institution that's responsible for that? Right? What's the culture around this that allowed that harm to happen? We have collective responsibility for each other. That's African. I have an old leader say that. That's African,
Yeah.
right? We are collectively responsible for each other. So if somebody is harmed, you can't have real community. If people are harmed in your community and you feel like that's not your responsibility, that's not community.
Mm,
And that's how it's different. That's how the Bronx, to me, is different. Because I remember the days, right, wrong, or whatever. I remember the days when there was somebody a predator in our community, when those men, my father included, got together and made sure that person was out the community, right? Something happened in that community, they collectively got together and addressed it. Something happened in the community, somebody got evicted, somebody had a fire, we got together and figured out how you was going to help that person. Was it a rent party? Was it whatever you want to do? There was collective work and responsibility, was an ethic that I saw and witnessed in my life in real time growing up in the Bronx. I did not grow up in a community that said we throw people away. I don't care if you're on drugs. I don't care if you got put out. I don't care what it is. We figure out how to take care of our own. You can't take care of your kids, send them here to eat.
Yep.
Right? That's what I grew up understanding, how to be in community with people. I learned that in the Bronx. Nowhere else. I learned that in the Bronx. So that is what I carry with me about being from this borough. That's what I carry with me about being a native of this city, right? People can say what they want about New York, but that's what I got. And that's what I carry. That's what I carry with me in movement work. That's the framing that I use when I think about what we have to do to survive. I get that from how I was raised, and I was raised in the Bronx.
That actually answers my next. Well, I was going to ask about things that you learned, or something that you learned while you were growing up, or just over your time in the Bronx that you still carry with you, and that permeates your work and your personality and your being, the things that you still keep and like think that are top of mind, or sometimes not even top of mind, but you know that it's there. And that sounds like that's what that is.
That's it. I learned that here. My father was the number man in the neighborhood, which meant he was the man, you know, but it also meant he had more resources than other people. And I watched him use those resources to support people, right? He did not hoard his resources. You know that you can come to Mr. West to eat. You knew that you can come to him if the rent wasn't paid. Like we had people in our house all the time. We had children in our house all the time, right? He was the one who organized the bus rides. He was the one who helped to organize the block party. He's also the one who had the wrench. So if you want the pump open, that's right. You want that pump open, you had to go get Mr. West because he had the big wrench, like the fire department. You know what I mean? So he was a role model for me for how you treat people, and he treated everybody equal. I've seen the dope fiends who was nodding off, and he treated them like human beings, right? Made sure they had something to eat, took them and sat them in the alley, and we had an alleyway that was, for people who don't understand, I guess the alley in New York is not bad. It was just, I don't know how to quickly explain that, but he would sit them in there and make sure they went out of harm's way. I watched him treat people like human beings and dignity, regardless of what their station was in life. And that's what I learned from not just him, from the people around. Mr. Johnny, who's, you know, we were all different cultures, Black, Puerto Rican, Indian, Southeast Asian. Like, we had a plethora of people in the neighborhood, and it was everybody not just got along, but learned from each other, right? That's how you learn to eat, right? You learn to eat different foods, you learn different music, you learned all of these things, and I've taken all of that with me. Those are the things I carry with me on a regular basis, right? It is how I know how to, that's how you get some act right. People like, you don't know how to act. I know how to act because I was raised well and in community with people who made sure I knew better.
Powerful. I'm grateful for the same sort of upbringing. So,
you know, you out in Queens, I know you had a lot of people.
Yes, I couldn't go anywhere.
Exactly. You know, like I was on 167th Street. Let me be down 163rd Street and don't nobody know. Like, why are you down here?
Right. Oh, okay. So we're gonna wrap up.
Yes, I gotta jump for another call too.
It may take you a few seconds to think about the answer to this, so that's completely fine.
Oh,
but
I'm spanning. Let me stop. I forgot you got to edit this.
It's okay. So if you could write a love letter to the Bronx, what would it say?
Oh, everything that I've just said. I call myself a Bronx nationalist because, as a joke, but it is the truth. I'm so grateful. What I would say is, I'm so grateful that it was you. I feel like just like when we are, they say parent babies pick their parents. I think we are places pick each other. I can't imagine being from anywhere else in the world, and I wouldn't want to be. And so I'm grateful for the lessons. I'm grateful for both of them, good and bad, right? I also got stuck up on the concourse a couple times, so it's okay. I learned some things. But I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the laughter. I'm grateful for the lessons. I'm grateful for the grounding. Um, I'm grateful for the community, and I I stand in that gratitude on a regular basis, and I also try to live a life that makes my borough proud. I try to, and I hope that I'm living a life that makes my borough proud. Um, yeah, and I love you. That's what I would say in a letter to the Bronx. Dear BX, I love you.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Tarana, for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I love talking about these things, so I appreciate it.